यहाँ पे इटली की प्रधानमंत्री आई तो उन्होंने आके कहा मोदी जी की विश्वसनीयता, उनकी लोकप्रियता दुनिया भर में बढ़ रही है, उनकी मांग बढ़ रही है। मोदी जी मेजर लीडर के रूप में दुनिया ने स्वीकारा है।
We're crossing over to CNN News 18's Pallavi Ghosh, who's our senior editor. Pallavi, can you take us through the war of words that's erupting yet again over Rahul's comments made in the United Kingdom?
So as far as Rahul Gandhi goes, and the Congress party is but naturally defending him, saying that what's wrong in what he's saying, because he's essentially showing the mirror and something which the world is very much aware of. So to sum up, in the last 3 to 4 lectures that he's already given, whether it's a university press conference addressing the Indian diaspora or even the British Parliament, he certainly has said that the institutions in our country are crumbling, democracy has been compromised, and anyone who raises a point or asks a question of the government is targeted. Either their mics are switched off, they're not allowed to speak inside Parliament, or there are cases which are applied against them. He gave he gave an instance of himself also.
Hello, namaskar. This is First Post, and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. It's an action-packed Tuesday. We are starting with the story of drones. They're everywhere in the war in Ukraine. Russia has a new weapon in its arsenal. It's called the boomerang drone. And Moscow is presenting it as a game changer. The Ukrainians too are looking at drones to change the tide of this conflict, and they want cluster bombs from the Americans. We'll talk about what is being used and why these new age weapons are being used in this war. Also why the rest of the world is looking to replenish its drone supplies, its drone stocks. Which are the biggest players? How big is this market? We'll discuss all of that on the show. We're also looking at China. The president has picked his new team. Who are the top 7 men? What is Xi Jinping's core team now? And what is their priority? We'll discuss all of that. Meanwhile, Germany and Poland are at odds. The latest flashpoint is Ukraine. And here's something that you probably already knew, but the United Nations chief has said this now. Gender equality is just 300 years away. Happy Women's Day, we say in advance. We'll talk about all these stories. The headlines first. North Korea's war threat to the US. Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, says that if America shoots down its test missiles, it will be a declaration of war. The warning comes as US and South Korea scale up their military drills after a record number of missile tests by Pyongyang. Israeli warplanes struck the Aleppo airport before dawn. This is a claim by the Syrian Defense Ministry. The attack reportedly caused major damage to the airport and halted flights to and from Syria's second largest city. Bankrupt Sri Lanka moves a step closer to securing an IMF bailout. President Ranil Wickremesinghe says China has agreed to restructure its loans finally. China is the island nation's largest bilateral creditor. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in Iraq on an unannounced visit. The trip comes just 2 weeks before the 20th anniversary of the US-led invasion that toppled Saddam Hussein. And a big blow to Japan's space agency. Its second attempt to launch the next-generation H-3 rocket fails after liftoff. The spacecraft was forced to self-destruct. We start with Ukraine and how the war is shifting. Russia is on the verge of scoring a major win. Ukraine is striking deep into Russian territory. Russia has introduced a new weapon, the boomerang drone. Ukraine wants America to give it cluster bombs. In the next few minutes, we'll break down the shift. We'll look at the new state-of-the-art weapons that are changing the game. Starting with a battle for Bakhmut. The Russian forces are closing in. They're making gains every day, and Ukraine is under pressure to retreat. If Bakhmut falls, it will be a big prize for Russia, its first major win in more than 6 months. How is it happening? Russia has changed its strategy. Instead of sweeping offensives, it is now taking a more targeted approach. The mass firepower has been replaced by drones of all shapes and sizes. They're all being deployed, and they're being used for everything, for launching attacks, for reconnaissance, even as a tool for distraction. In Bakhmut, Russia launched a wave of drone attacks. Ukraine is on the defensive. It wants more powerful drones to hit back. Listen to this Ukrainian soldier on the front lines.
Потрібно ховатися, якщо ви їх бачите, а не стріляти.
When you see drones, you have to hide and not shoot. There is very little chance that you will be able to hit them, so the chance that they hit you is very high. That's why you have to hide. And we are flying drones, we can see who's hitting us, but we're not hitting them with artillery, while they hit our drones. And in 80% of the cases, it's losses in their unit because of our army. In 4 months, they've hit 4 drones.
Нас збили за...
He's right. Russia is using more drones and they're proving to be quite an effective weapon. Ukraine too is using them, sending them deep inside Russian territory. Last week, in fact, a drone came close to Moscow. There was a flurry of drone strikes. Yesterday it happened again. A military tower was struck inside Russia. Ukraine's special forces took responsibility for this one. And how is Russia responding? With an all-new weapon being introduced to this war. It is called the boomerang drone. Take a look at this. This video was released by the Russian Defense Ministry. It shows the boomerang drone. It's small, it has 4 propellers, 4 small motors, a big battery and a special magazine filled with explosives. These drones belong to a special category. They're called the kamikaze drones. They're basically suicide weapons. We've told you about this before. These drones are packed with explosives. They fly into enemy territory and then they explode. Usually 2 soldiers operate one drone. One of them controls it, the other navigates it. The Russian military video shows the operator wearing what look like VR glasses. VR, as you would know, is virtual reality. The operator is wearing VR glasses. Russia says it has deployed this technology, virtual reality, with the drone. How does it help? It is used to detect and destroy the target. So the first soldier operates the drone with a VR headset. The second one plays the role of an assistant. He tracks the drone's flight path and guides the operator. Now the biggest advantage of this weapon is its speed. Russia says this drone can fly at 170 kilometers per hour. The second benefit is its battery life. It can stay in the air for 3 hours. And since it is so small, it can escape radars. So Russia's strategy is clear. It has made a tactical shift from relying on bigger weapons to deploying more drones. And the boomerang is just one example. We mentioned the Iranian drones. Tehran supplied Moscow with this drone, the Shahid 136. This too is a suicide drone. It loiters in the air and takes out targets on the ground. The drone has a range of 2,200 kilometers. It can carry a warhead weighing anywhere between 5 to 30 kilograms. Next we have the Orlan 10. Again, it's a small drone. It has a camera and a small bomb. This drone has computer chips too. They enable navigation. Russia has been weaponizing commercial drones as well. Those that are readily available in the market, Russian forces fit bombs on them. But these drones stay in the air for just 45 minutes. So that's a drawback. And that is Russia's drone arsenal. What about Ukraine? Ukraine too is sending drones, using drones, and it wants more of them. Yesterday, Ukraine carried out an operation deep inside Russian territory. It was done by Ukraine's special forces. The target was a military watchtower. It was inside Russia's Bryansk region. Now, it's not clear when this happened, but Ukraine has released a video, a Hollywood-style Seems like video editors are the new soldiers in this war and propaganda is the tool of choice. But on the ground, the drones are changing the course of the conflict, and to counter Russia's new offensive, Ukraine has sent a new request to America. It wants cluster bombs. These are lethal explosives, cluster bombs, and the one that Kiev wants is called the MK-20. It's a cluster bomb delivered by an aircraft. Once the bomb is released, it opens in the air and it releases several smaller bombs. They drop on the enemy like rain. How many bombs does one explosive pack? More than 240 according to one claim. 240 bombs in one cluster bomb. Think of it as an explosive, a group of darts. When they're thrown together, they travel in different directions. So they hit a wider area. Ukraine believes the Mk-20 can counter Russia's drone strikes. It sounds like an effective weapon, but it's also a dangerous one. Cluster bombs are banned by more than 120 countries. India is not one of them. Reports say India maintains a stockpile of these bombs. But why have these other countries banned cluster bombs? It's because they pose a risk to civilians. A cluster bomb is a controversial weapon. Will Ukraine be allowed to use it? More importantly, will the US give it to Ukraine? Reports say Washington is yet to decide. In the meantime, Ukraine is relying on another American weapon. It's called the Switchblade 300. This too is an American drone, and it can take out an entire building with a single hit. Then there are the Turkish drones, like the Bayraktar TB2. It's a small plane. It's like a small plane, this drone. It has many capabilities, like reconnaissance and targeted attacks. Ukraine has used these drones to strike deep inside Russia, and it plans to use more such weapons. This is how the war is changing. As stockpiles of conventional weapons shrink, drones will decide the fate of this war. And the trend is not limited to Ukraine. Drones are fast becoming the world's weapon of choice. They're convenient to use, they're cost effective, and they save human resources. So drones are playing a significant role in conflict zones around the world, and militaries are building bigger drone arsenals. Tonight, we'll discuss the latest trends. We'll talk about how big the global drone market is and which are the leading players in this industry. Starting with India. India is close to approving a big drone deal. Reports say India is looking to buy the MQ-9B drones from America. These are Predator drones, and India is keen to buy at least 30 of them. It will cost $3 billion or 24,000 crore rupees. These drones come with anti-submarine and anti-ship capabilities, also land attack capabilities. And India's decision to buy these drones will not sit well with China. The Predator drones will be deployed in the Himalayas to monitor China's aggression along the border. They'll also help India keep an eye on the Indian Ocean region, where China has been active. This deal is expected to be finalized when Prime Minister Modi visits the US this summer. It will also be a testament to the growing ties between Washington and New Delhi. So far, America has given such drones only to its treaty allies, to other NATO members. So India will be the first country outside the NATO club to get access to these drones. And this defense partnership, India and the US, it's relatively new. Till 2008, defense trade between these two countries was close to zero. Today, it stands at well over $20 billion. That's the India story. Then we have Japan, a country that is fast shedding its pacificism. Japan faces a dual threat from China and North Korea. In 2021, it began developing unmanned aircraft for military use. By 2035, Japan wants to deploy unmanned fighter jets. It is looking to replace its military aircraft with drones. And for Japan, there is added incentive to invest in unmanned weapons. This country faces an acute dearth of manpower. It has to prepare for a future where it may not have enough human resources. So it's investing in unmanned weapons. And do you know who dominates this market? The United States. In 2021, the global military drone market was worth more than $10 billion, and it's growing by the year. Last year, it was close to $12 billion. By 2029, it could cross the $30 billion mark. And the US leads this market when it comes to unmanned surveillance drones. It's making more of them. But when it comes to the export of armed drones, China is the world leader. China is giving drones to more countries. In the past decade, China has delivered 282 combat drones. 282 combat drones to 17 countries. What about the US? Not even close. America has supplied just 12 combat drones in the last 10 years, and all of them have gone to two countries, France and the United Kingdom. What explains this? Why has the US been left behind? You see, Chinese drones are cheap, so more countries buy them, and they buy more of them. Also, China allows countries a flexible payment mechanism. It's not a huge fan of rules anyway. The US does not. Here's another interesting fact. There's this Chinese company, a drone company, it's called DJI. And this Chinese drone company controls 70% of the world's drone market, 70%. DJI manufactures civilian drones, at least that's what it claims. And civilian drones, along with military ones, make up a $30 billion market worldwide. By the end of this decade, this market will grow to $55 billion. Another big player, interestingly, is Turkey. It has emerged as a major drone power. Its Bayraktar TB drones have become a sensation the world over. At least 28 countries have bought the Turkish drone, and they're all quite happy with it, we're told. And the era of drones is just getting started. You may remember the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict back in 2020. Azerbaijan used Turkish drones to overpower Armenia. That's because drones make war for countries easier. Militaries no longer need to put their soldiers on the line. Drones can be operated remotely and they can cause a lot of damage. Ask Ukraine, it's at the receiving end in Bakhmut. Also, drones are relatively cheap. In the near future, UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, could do pretty much all that a fighter jet does. Reconnaissance, surveillance, attack. And another thing I must point out, the West doesn't have a stranglehold over the drone market. There are countries like China, Turkey, and even Iran. All of them have become robust manufacturers of drones. And they're making sure more countries have access to this technology. The West won't have much of a say on who gets which weapons. And that, we say, is a major shift. So far, the biggest defense manufacturers in the world were concentrated in a handful of countries. Drones are changing that. And talking about wars, China seems to be gearing up for one. It's not what you think. This is about China's internal challenges. Beijing is dealing with a long list of problems: a struggling economy, a hostile environment overseas, and a credibility crisis, which is an old problem, really. But maybe they've begun to see it themselves now. So the question is, how will China deal with these issues? Xi Jinping is doing what bad managers do. You don't take blame for the problems. You don't give freedom to your team to fix the problems. You just change the team. That's what the Chinese president is doing, appointing a new team. And this is a group of trusted lieutenants, needless to say, all men. I mean, look at their CCP meetings and tell me if you can spot a woman. But that's a discussion for another day, perhaps. For now, Xi Jinping is appointing an all-new, all-male crack team. And their task is cut out. We'll start with the number 2, the position of the premier, the second most powerful man in China after Xi Jinping. Currently, it's Li Keqiang. And now he's making way for another Li Qiang. He'll be the new premier of China. Li Qiang has known Xi Jinping for almost 2 decades. They worked together before. This was in the province of Zhejiang. Xi Jinping served as the party boss there. And when he took the top job as Chinese president, he made Li Qiang the governor of Zhejiang. His last assignment was in Shanghai. Li Qiang was the Communist Party chief there in Shanghai. He oversaw last year's draconian lockdown. 25 million people were locked up in their homes for 2 months in Shanghai. There was a major backlash, an angry backlash against this policy. But it seems to have won him more brownie points in Beijing. After all, he's getting a promotion now. Li will be the new premier of China. His key responsibility will be to manage the Chinese economy and, if possible, to revive it. It won't be easy. We wish him luck. Next on the team is Zhao Leji. He will be the number 3. His role, China's chief lawmaker. The responsibilities include turning Xi Jinping's political vision into specific laws. Then we have Wang Huning. He will oversee 2 areas, ethnic and religious affairs, and Taiwan. Ding Xuxiang is the new executive vice premier of China. He was Xi Jinping's chief of staff. He will have oversight over government affairs, and he'll implement economic and industrial policy. He Leifang will be serving as the vice premier. He will oversee economic, finance, and trade policies. General He Weidong will be the military man in Xi Jinping's team. He's set to serve as a state councillor. He used to lead the PLA's Eastern Theatre Command, the one that is the closest to Taiwan, and that explains his presence in the top 7. In fact, there's a special emphasis on Taiwan in this reshuffle. Xi Jinping's new foreign minister made that clear today. His name is Qing Gang. He was in New Delhi a few days back. You might remember that. Today he's in Beijing. Qing did a press conference. When asked about Taiwan, guess how he responded? He pulled out a copy of the Constitution of China and tried to prove that Taiwan belongs to Beijing.
回答你的问题，我首先
To answer your question, let me first quote two sentences from the preamble of the Constitution of the People's Republic of China.
台湾
Taiwan is a part of the sacred territory of the People's Republic of China. It is the sacred duty of all the Chinese people, including our fellow Chinese in Taiwan, to achieve the great reunification of the motherland.
全中国人民的神圣职责。
Qin is conveying a clear message here. China's muscular foreign policy is set to continue, and she is leading from the front, in taking on America at least. The Chinese president said that Washington is trying to suppress Beijing. Allow me to quote from what he said. And this is Xi Jinping. He says, Western countries led by the US have implemented all-round containment, encirclement and suppression against us, bringing unprecedentedly severe challenges to our country's development. That's what he said, the Chinese president. He's playing the victim here, but he's not the victim. His appointments convey what many already know. The Chinese president today is stronger than ever before. There are no potential successors in his inner circle. In fact, this is a group of yes men. Their positions are tied to their loyalty to Xi Jinping. They will not challenge him. Xi Jinping's epic power grab is now complete. Vantage continues after a short break.
पर है कोई त्योहार हो तो देश में नहीं विदेश में पाए जाते हैं और विदेशी दोस्त हों, विदेशी एजेंसियां हो या विदेशी जमी हो, देश पर प्रहार करने से कहीं बाज नहीं आते। ये अपने आप में दिखाता है कि वो भारत को बदनाम करने में कहीं पीछे नहीं रह रहे। भ्रम फैलाना, झूठ बोलना, देश के बारे में देखिए आज दुनिया क्या कहती है। यहाँ पे इटली की प्रधानमंत्री आई तो उन्होंने आके कहा मोदी जी की विश्वसनीयता, उनकी लोकप्रियता दुनिया भर में बढ़ रही है, उनकी मांग बढ़ रही है। मोदी जी मेजर लीडर के रूप में दुनिया ने स्वीकारा है।
In Europe, the union remains in disunion. This time it's Germany and Poland. They're at odds over the war in Ukraine. They can't agree on how much military aid should be given. Clearly, Europe has bitten off more than it can chew here. Poland says Germany is slowing them down. It has a long list of complaints against Germany. They're fighting over missiles, tanks, and spare parts. It all began when the West decided to give tanks to Ukraine. Initially, Germany was reluctant, but it came around. Berlin, with other European partners, agreed to transfer more than 100 tanks to Kiev. The announcement was made in January. Last we checked, Germany is yet to make the transfer. And now Poland says Germany's support is half-hearted because tanks will not be enough. Poland says Germany should also share spare parts with Ukraine. This is basically about the Leopard tank. Both Germany and Poland are sharing these tanks with Ukraine, but some of these tanks are old, so they might need spare parts. Poland says spare parts are necessary. Without the parts, the tanks will be of limited use to Kiev. And now the Polish president has spoken out. Listen to what Andrzej Duda said last week, and I'm quoting. The main responsibility rests with the Federal Republic of Germany, the main producer of those tanks. We've been urging the German side for so long to join the tank coalition and not only deliver the tanks, but also the spare parts. Last month, Poland delivered 4 tanks to Ukraine. It was the first set of deliveries. The Polish Prime Minister himself went to Ukraine for a photo op.
Dear soldiers, we brought the first 4 Leopards from Poland in order for you to chase away the Russian aggressor as soon as possible. Thank you for your bravery.
Poland came out ahead. It gave the Leopard tanks, but they came with the same problem. They're old and they're no longer in production. So finding parts is going to be difficult. And this could further affect ties. You see, Poland and Germany are neighbors. and they don't get along on a host of issues. The tensions erupted last year when Poland demanded compensation from Germany. Compensation for what? Damages caused in the Second World War. Do you know how much money Poland is asking for? $1.3 trillion. Last year, Polish lawmakers started a campaign. They want wartime damages and reparations from Germany. Warsaw says the invasion by Nazi Germany led to losses worth over $1 trillion. Berlin promptly rejected that demand, but Poland's ruling party is in no mood to give up.
In truth, Germany has never paid for the crimes it committed against Poland. We know that the road will be long and difficult. We don't expect successes soon. I've already heard a very important German politician say that no German government will accept it.
But they did not. Germany doesn't even consider this to be an issue. Poland was offended. Look at what Poland's foreign minister said in January, and I'm quoting again. The answer shows an absolutely disrespectful attitude towards Poland and Poles. Germany does not pursue a friendly policy towards Poland. It wants to build its sphere of influence here and treats Poland as a vassal state. Now, the neighbors are fighting over Ukraine, and it could escalate. Also because of domestic politics. Poland goes to polls in October this year. And in Poland, the public sentiment is against Germany. Lawmakers are capitalizing on that. So some of the angry exchanges could just be to whip up public support. What about Germany? What does Berlin say in its defense? Last month, the German defense minister spoke out. He attacked Warsaw. Boris Pistorius said he had doubts about the Polish tanks. He believes they're not operational. But what about the German tank deliveries? When is Berlin sending tanks to Ukraine? There are no fixed dates yet. Last month, Pistorius did say that Kiev will get the tanks by the end of March. Germany is training Ukrainian soldiers on these tanks. And outside Europe, the war in Ukraine is getting more attention. Japan, for instance, is making moves. It is reaching out to India. In fact, the Japanese Prime Minister is planning a trip to India. He could come to India later this month. And this will be important for many reasons. Japan is the serving president of the G7 this year. That's a group of 7, a grouping of the world's 7 richest countries. In that capacity, Japan wants to work closely with India, the G20 president. Japan feels that it could use India's help to deal with some of the pressing challenges. The outcome of this meeting will be closely watched. We now shift our focus to Turkey, a country that was battered by massive earthquakes last month. It is now gearing up for an election that could potentially shift the political tectonic plates too. Let me explain. Elections in Turkey are due in the month of May, and President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's political future is on the line. How? He's losing popularity rather quickly. Inflation under his watch is over 50%. The earthquakes ravaged areas which are his traditional strongholds. His government's response is being seen as poor, and the construction boom was seen as his big achievement. It is now being blamed for the devastation. So the upcoming election is a litmus test for him, perhaps the toughest of his career. And now he has a challenger from the opposition. It is this man, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the official presidential candidate of the opposition in Turkey. And remember, the opposition is an alliance. It is called the Table of Six. A rather shaky table. We'll tell you more about it in a bit. But first, listen in to what the Turkish opposition had to say.
I consider it a duty to announce the decision we have taken following our meetings. We name Mr. Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu as a presidential candidate.
Our table is the table of peace and brotherhood. Our biggest goal is to carry Turkey towards prosperous, peaceful and joyful days. We will govern Turkey through consultation and consensus.
So who is Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu? For starters, he heads the largest opposition party in Turkey, the Republican People's Party or CHP. Kılıçdaroğlu was born in Turkey's Tunceli province, the same province that has witnessed many violent rebellions in the past, but this man calls himself a quiet force. His colleagues have gone one step forward. They call him Turkey's Gandhi, a reference to one of India's greatest icons, Mahatma Gandhi. But why the comparison? Kılıçdaroğlu's colleagues say he is soft-spoken like Mahatma Gandhi and to a certain degree even looks like him. This man has worn many hats over the years. He started off as a bureaucrat in the 1970s. He entered Turkey's Ministry of Finance at a junior level, went on to hold top roles in various institutions, retired in 1999, and then entered politics. In fact, the year 2002 was the breakout year for Turkish politics for two people, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu and Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. Kılıçdaroğlu entered the Turkish parliament for the first time in 2002. He was his party's deputy from Istanbul. And Erdoğan made a big gain. His party, the Justice and Development Party, AKP, came to power for the first time under his leadership. 20 years on, these two men are facing off in a presidential election. In all these years, Kılıçdaroğlu has tried to project himself as a leader with a difference, one who is not corrupt. But it's not helped beyond a point. The man is 74 years old. He's been leading his party for 13 years, but they haven't won a single election under him. Not yet. Will this year be different? As of today, his chances are limited. Opinion polls say only 40% people are happy with his record as opposition leader, and that's less than the majority he needs in the election. Some of his party colleagues are said to have more favorable ratings, and they stand a better chance at defeating Erdoğan, which is why the nomination as an official candidate, his nomination, came with a fair bit of drama. The alliance was on the verge of a breakup. Some members were not confident about Kılıçdaroğlu's chances.
Maalesef ve maalesef.
Unfortunately, our views and suggestions were rejected in a resolute way by the stakeholders at the table. I'm sorry to say that as of yesterday, the table of 6 has lost its ability to reflect the will of the nation in its decisions.
Millet iradesini.
But the dissent lasted for barely 72 hours. Concessions were made. The dissenters were told they'll be accommodated as vice presidents if they win the election. And they joined ranks again. Now, as they face the election, what's their USP? What is the opposition's unique selling proposition? They're hoping to capitalize on the anger against Erdoğan, and they're promising to restore Turkey's parliamentary system. It was scrapped in 2018, remember, to bring in president's rule.
We will govern Turkey through consultation and consensus. As the heads of the political parties forming the Nation Alliance, we have also agreed on the roadmap for the transition to a strengthened parliamentary system.
His challenger is Erdoğan, and it's not going to be an easy fight. The two men share a long and bitter political history. In 2016, Kılıçdaroğlu was prosecuted for insulting Erdoğan. He called the president a dictator. Then he scored a major electoral win against Erdoğan. In 2019, he put together a coalition that won big elections in Istanbul and Ankara. It was seen as a big defeat for the president. But the road to Turkey's presidency is not going to be an easy one for Kılıçdaroğlu. The biggest stumbling block will be the disinformation law. It was passed last year, and it has a provision to arrest citizens who spread misinformation. Erdoğan has used this law widely against his critics, including Kılıçdaroğlu. He became the first person to be reportedly charged for slander against Erdoğan's AKP party. If convicted, he faces up to 3 years in jail, which brings us to the million-dollar question: can this man, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, defeat Recep Tayyip Erdoğan and end his 2-decade-long rule of Turkey? It's expected to go down to the wire. 3 months ahead of the election, Turkey seems to have no clear favorite. And while we're still in West Asia, let's talk about a country that has hit the gold mine, and quite literally so. Iran has just hit the white gold mine. Lithium is called white gold, and not without good reason. The metal will drive the world in the future. Batteries needed for a variety of electronics run on lithium. And lithium is a critical element in electric vehicles. And if Iran's discovery of lithium is true, it will make the country the world's second largest holder of lithium reserves, which could radically change Tehran's fortunes and force the world to rethink its relationship with the country. This is the same Iran that is amongst the most sanctioned countries in the world. Lithium could be its way out. Our next report tells you more.
Lithium, it's all around you. In your smartphones, laptops, headphones, and just about any battery-driven device. It's also in cars. Batteries used in electric vehicles are made of lithium. As the world tries to wean itself off fossil fuels, lithium has become an extremely important element. For countries that have lithium deposits, it's a prized possession that makes them matter. And Iran is the latest country to hit the lithium jackpot. On Saturday, Iran announced the discovery of large lithium deposits in the western province of Hamadan. Iran's Minister for Industry, Mines and Trade said, for the first time in Iran, a lithium reserve has been discovered in Hamadan. He also gave a rough figure. Iran estimates that it now has 8.5 million tons of lithium. That accounts for the world's second largest lithium reserves after Chile. Chile holds 9.2 million tons of lithium reserves. That also makes Iran the country that holds a tenth of the world's lithium reserves. Before Iran, India was the country that got lucky with lithium. Last month, India discovered close to 5.9 million tons of lithium reserves in Jammu and Kashmir. The discovery of the light metal has the potential to propel India's electric vehicle and electronic sectors. But for Iran, the discovery of lithium means a lot more. It could change the way the world looks at Iran. Presently, Iran is reeling under the stress of economic sanctions. Its economy is in a bad shape, its currency even worse. The rial has lost 30% of its value against the US dollar in the last 2 months. Inflation in Iran is hovering around the 50% mark. Iranians are now finding it difficult to buy meat. It's now out of their reach. Poverty has risen, especially in Iran's rural areas. This is happening to a country that is one of the world's largest producers of oil and gas. But international sanctions make it extremely difficult for Iran to export its fuel. That means there's not much revenue coming in, resulting in economic misery, and the people are losing their patience.
There is a limit to our patience. We can tolerate difficulties to a certain limit. When we are past that limit, people stop and ask, what are we supposed to do? Maybe dollar rate reaches 1 million rials. How are we supposed to live? How far this thing is going to go? Until when?
The lithium discovery could be a lifesaver for Iran. Lithium is an expensive metal, and its demand is expected to rise. If Iran manages to become an exporter of lithium, and that's a big if, its economic woes could be significantly mitigated. The West would have to walk back on its harsh sanctions on Iran to import its lithium. And even if it doesn't, the world is just so much wider than the West. What's to say there won't be countries willing to bypass sanctions and buy lithium from Iran? China most certainly will. China is among the biggest importers of lithium, and its ties with Iran are flourishing. Iran might have just found a key to escape its economic crisis. Will it know how to use it, though? Only time will tell.
Our next story is about luxury coming of age in India. Headlines across the board make one thing clear: upward mobility. That is the trend. Be it in fashion, housing, or automobiles, Indians are on the hunt for the finer things in life, and they aren't afraid to flaunt them. Let's take housing, for example. What qualities do you look for in an apartment complex? Good plumbing? Proximity to the grocery store or the metro? For some, the priorities are slightly different. They want an apartment complex with a heated pool and spas, even concierge services. And the eagerness to own luxury homes in India is more than you may believe. In fact, the market is seeing a fresh boom after years. What are these luxury homes we're talking about? In property development language, they are spacey, high-price apartments. They come with deluxe add-ons. Apart from the ones we already mentioned, they can include facilities like multi-level parking and large green open spaces with landscape gardens, even amphitheaters and sky deck lobbies. Indian builders are now offering $3 million apartments. Some are offering $20 million homes. Instead of people vetting the houses, builders are vetting their clients. They're showing apartments to a select few by invitation. $1 billion residential projects are sold out in 72 hours in India. People are queuing up at home booking centers. Others are willing to pay extremely high prices for homes in areas where other properties go at a much lower price. There's a mad rush. And if this is not proof of a revival in luxury housing, we have some numbers. A record 65,700 luxury units were sold in 2022. And this is 3 times the previous year. Cities like Mumbai, New Delhi and Hyderabad led the sales, and luxury home sales accounted for 17% of all housing launches last year, which was a 5-year high. But houses are not the only luxury goods that are selling like hotcakes. Mercenaries sold a record number of high-end cars in India last year. 2 months into 2023, Lamborghini cars are already sold out in India, and Audi expects record luxury car sales too. India has toppled France to become the largest Scotch whisky market in the world. Last year, 53% of ultra-wealthy individuals splurged on luxury handbags in India. This is up from 9% in 2020. New India is living the bling life, mostly thanks to its 8 lakh millionaires. And their number could increase to 1.4 million by 2026. Compare this with the data from 2021 and you'll see the growth, a 77% growth. The third highest growth after Malaysia and China. India is the third highest after Malaysia and China, and ahead of Asian countries and regions like Japan, Hong Kong and Thailand, among others. India is rising, and so are the incomes of its citizens. There's also a growing number of upstarts or the newly rich, and they're looking for a lifestyle upgrade. This especially after the pandemic, which kept them confined indoors and also dampened sentiment with an economic slowdown. Now, the luxury market is not just selling houses, shoes, bags and liquor. It's creating its own society of the most influential. It is selling an aspirational lifestyle. But for some, aspiration is all there will ever be. The gold rush of luxury belongs to the upper crust of India, the richest 1%. They own over 40% of India's total wealth. The world is their oyster, while most Indians cannot afford one. The irony is that the country's poor and middle class are taxed more than the rich. Approximately 64% of the total GST, goods and services tax, 64% came from the bottom 50% of the population of India. Only 4% of GST came from the top 10% population. So while India is crawling with millionaires, 1.4 billion people have a per capita income of $2,300. And for the 5-year high luxury housing sales we saw last year, the sale of affordable homes has halved. Meanwhile, in France, people are out on the streets again. Fiery barricades have been set up. Cities are coming to a standstill. Riot police are facing off against a wall of protesters. And no, this is not a prelude to civil war. It's another strike over President Emmanuel Macron's pension reform. The reform will raise France's retirement age from 62 to 64, and people will have to work for 43 years to get complete pension benefits. The French don't want to work. Macron says this reform is required to keep pensions in France financially viable. But the French people are not happy. It's the biggest strike since January 31st, when about 500,000 people turned up to protest. And this time, protesters have vowed to bring the country to its knees. Polls say about 2/3 of the French people support these strikes. And time is running out to stop the reform. Here's more.
The latest protest in France has begun. Roads have been blocked and barricaded. The makeshift ramparts were set ablaze. This was to delay a cleanup by the authorities. Fuel deliveries from refineries across France have been blocked. Garbage collectors, utility workers and train drivers have staged walk-offs. So have about 60% of school teachers, forcing schools to shut. Transportation workers have blockaded bus depots to halt services. They want to escalate the costs faced by the government.
Disheartening of the movement is what the government wants. It's going to cost them a lot politically, and it's also going to cost the employers a lot economically, because a day of the general strike means 1.5 to 2 billion euros lost every day for companies.
Strike actions had already begun on Monday. Truckers blocked major highways and intersections, forcing traffic to slow down. The go-slow actions have been dubbed escargot, the French word for snail. This is the sixth big strike since the turn of the year. While the ones in February were smaller, today's protest is expected to bring over 1 million people to the streets. The government was prepared for the chaos. It took a number of steps to minimize the disruptions. It encouraged people to work from home. Airlines were asked to cancel some flights out of major airports. An open-ended strike at France's National Rail Authority began on Monday. Only 1 in 5 regional and high-speed trains are expected to run. Authorities warned people that trains to Spain and Germany would grind to a halt. Trains between France and the UK were reduced by a third. Despite the widespread effects these strikes will have on people, polls say a majority of the French support the actions. The citizens are up in arms to oppose a change that can affect them all, a change to the retirement age. French President Emmanuel Macron wants to raise France's retirement age from 62 to 64. And to receive full pension benefits, people will need to work for 43 years. Simple math tells us this means only those who start working at 21 can actually retire at 64, that too without breaks. Those who go for higher studies or women who take a break to have and raise children usually have to work longer anyway. Opponents of the pension reform say it will add to the burdens of those already struggling. Macron says the reforms are imperative. If things don't change, deficits are predicted in France's pension system over the next 25 years. Supporters also argue that neighboring countries have raised retirement ages as life expectancy has increased. Italy, Germany and Spain have moved towards raising the official retirement age to 67. In the UK, it's currently 66. Macron's reform is also seen as a step in keeping the French economy globally competitive. But according to polls, supporters of his plan account for only about 32% of the population. The rest of the country is against him and taking to the streets. Macron might still be able to push his reforms through parliament, but how much public ire can he and his party actually endure?
Before we begin our last story today, I want to wish you a happy Women's Day in advance. But fair warning, this story may dampen said happiness. And we think it should. After all, we'll be talking about gender equality. It's obvious that we haven't achieved it yet. In fact, we probably won't achieve it for hundreds of years. And we aren't the only ones saying this.
Gender equality is growing more distant. On the current track, where Newman puts it 300 years away.
Gender equality is 300 years away. That's a long time. Let's look 300 years back to put this in perspective. It was pre-industrial revolution. The French Revolution was still making waves. The Ottoman Empire was still a thing. And so was slave trade across the Atlantic. Why do we need so much time to reach equality? Because decades of advances on women's rights are being turned back. And we don't have to look too far in history to find examples of this. Let's look at Afghanistan. We'll quote Guterres in saying that women and girls have been erased from public life. The Taliban regime has barred them from universities. They've invalidated divorces. Women who remarried are now considered adulterers. So they're on the run. In other countries, the reproductive rights that women fought for are being rolled back. Just look at the United States. The nationwide right to abortion no longer exists in that country. And you already know what's happening in Iran. It is brutally cracking down on anti-hijab protesters. Not only this, women are usually the first and the worst to be affected by conflict. The war in Ukraine is the most recent example. Only a week after the war began last year, Ukrainian foreign minister alleged numerous cases of women being raped by soldiers. And these are severe cases of inequality. Just look at your classrooms, workplace, or homes for everyday examples. The sheer discrimination will stare back at you. And if these crises weren't enough, the pandemic made things worse. It wasn't just a public health or economic crisis, it was also a crisis of discrimination. It forced millions of girls out of school and mothers out of the global workforce. About 48 million women and girls were pushed into extreme poverty. This, in addition with closed schools, meant more girl-child marriages. Globally, 13 million more child marriages are projected to take place by 2030. 13 million. There was an over 30% surge in cases of violence against women by intimate partners and, of course, unpaid work during the pandemic. It kept the world running. 70% of it was done by women. Last year, women earned an average of 82% of what men earned. I could go on and on, but you get the idea. So let's talk about the dreaded P word, patriarchy. The word has clearly lost its meaning. We blame the overuse. So we can avoid it all we want to, but it's hard at work all over the world. Maybe it's time we interrogated what patriarchy means for us. Women make up half the world. This means if women aren't involved, the world also functions at half its potential. Eliminating gender disparities is not just the right thing to do, it also goes hand in hand with financial stability. It can stimulate economic growth, boost private and public sector performance. Empowering women is smart economics. It could add $12 trillion to global growth. Let me repeat that figure. Empowering women could add $12 trillion to global growth. So what are the priorities ahead? We will reiterate something you already know: better access to healthcare and education, additional steps to support women's return to the labor force, sector-specific training, further improvements in the quality of childcare. And if these sound like a giant leap, something as basic as equitable division of household chores will help the cause. The vision is ambitious, but gradual, collective, and measured implementation can guarantee success. Because 300 years to reach gender equality is absolutely unacceptable. We again quote Guterres in saying, "The patriarchy is fighting back, but so are we." And finally, it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Holi, the festival of colors, is upon us. It marks the arrival of spring and the end of winter. Celebrations have kicked off in various parts of India and Nepal. In Thailand, 100,000 candles were lit at a Thai temple. It was to honor the Buddha on Maka Bucha Day. In the US, California is receiving twice the amount of snow it usually gets. In Finland, bright and colorful northern lights lit up the sky. And finally, Barbie is celebrating the International Women's Day. The doll is no longer white, petite, and a damsel in distress waiting for Ken. She's now black, body positive, and a space scientist. Even if it's a marketing stunt, it's worth mentioning, we say. Leaving you with these visuals. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. India has, of course, set a target of 2070 for net zero carbon emissions. Australia has a similar goal. How do you see cooperation between India and Australia on climate change, particularly some of the newer technology that folks are talking about, like green hydrogen? How feasible do you think it is?
Look, green hydrogen is the holy grail because if we are able to use wind and solar power to economically create green hydrogen, it would certainly turn intermittent power into reliable power. But I think there's a long way to go before that technology is proven at scale. In the medium term, I think that it's wonderful that clean Australian coal is now entering India tariff-free, including coal from the Adani mine in central Queensland. I think that it's good that Australian scientists and technicians are working together to try to ensure that we do improve our green technologies. But the important thing in the end is not just to get emissions down, it's to keep the lights on in countries like Australia and to get the lights on in countries like India. And that's why I think the Adani mine was so important and why I backed it so strongly, because there are still tens of millions of people in India that lack access to 24/7 power, and this is helping to give it to them. Now, things have improved immensely over the last decade or so, thanks to the Modi government. But India is going to need Australian coal, Australian gas for quite some time. The world is going to need fossil fuels for quite some time. And yes, by all means, let's get emissions down as far and as fast as we can. But let's not do it in ways that really damage people's standard of living, particularly in countries like India that still have hundreds of millions of people not really living the kind of prosperous, secure existence that we'd like them to have.
It's going to be a busy week for diplomacy between Canberra and Delhi. This week, the new Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is going to be here in India. He's going to be in Delhi as well as in Ahmedabad. Australia and India are both members of the Quad. How do you see this grouping shaping up so far, including the Quad foreign ministers meeting that we had last week?
I think that relations between Australia and India have never been stronger. The fact that we have done the trade deal is great. The fact that we are both part of the Quad is great. The fact that we've had a cavalry.
Hello and welcome to CNN News 18 with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Breaking news coming in from Dhaka, where 16 people have died and over 100 have been injured in a multi-story building explosion. The cause of the blast is unknown as rescue operations are still underway. That's the piece of breaking news coming in from Bangladesh, ladies and gentlemen, where there was a massive explosion at a multi-story building in Dhaka. This was near a market area, and what we are learning is that 16 people have died and over 100 have been injured in this multi-story building explosion. The cause of the blast is unknown as rescue operations are still underway. That's the piece of breaking news that's coming. I'm joined by my colleague Kamalika Sen Gupta on the phone. And Kamalika, give us the details.
See, right now what we are getting is 16 people have already been killed and more than 100 injured in this multi-story building explosion in Dhaka. Now what we are getting is that there was this bus stand in this area of Dhaka. And this building was beside this bus stand where this explosion has taken place. And initially it was coming with 10 to 11 people have died. But no, now the confirmation is 16 people have died and more than 100 injured. Initially it was thought of that air conditioner could have busted, cylinder blast, things were also coming in. But still now it is not clear that what type of blast is. Being Dhaka, the capital, the most important place there, such a blast is definitely an area of concern.
Right, Kamalika, please stay with us. We're getting some more breaking news now. This is closer to home now. Tripura Chief Minister-elect Manik Saha is set to take the oath of office tomorrow after the BJP stellar victory in Tripura. The left has announced that it will boycott the swearing-in ceremony in protest over the post-poll violence. Kamalika is getting us this breaking news as well. Kamalika, give us the details.
Yeah, tomorrow is Tripura swearing in ceremony where Manik Shah will be swearing in as Chief Minister, and other Council of Ministers will also will take oath. Because left is alleged that there has been huge post-poll violence, though they have got invitation, but left in a statement has stated that though there is, because there is huge, large-scale post-poll violence, therefore, as a mark of protest, they are not going to participate in tomorrow's swearing-in ceremony.
Right. Thank you, Kamal, for getting us that piece of breaking news. So the left, which lost the Tripura elections to the BJP, which delivered that stellar victory in the state, has now decided to boycott the swearing-in ceremony, which will take place tomorrow, citing post-poll violence. That's the big piece of breaking news that's coming in from the state of Tripura. We're getting some more breaking news. This is concerning Pakistan, ladies and gentlemen. Now, after getting relief from the Islamabad High Court, Imran Khan makes a fresh election pitch, announces the launch of his election campaign from Lahore with a rally tomorrow afternoon. He says his party will mobilize both Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa for a record turnout. So that challenge coming in from Imran Khan to his political rivals, launching his campaign in the heart of Lahore, saying that he will mobilize a record turnout in the very important area of Punjab as well as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, where the PTI has a major base. I'm joined by my colleague Abhishek on the phone line. Abhishek, so Imran Khan getting relief from the Islamabad High Court, but now putting his focus on the elections.
Clearly, this 1 week that Imran Khan has got as a relief is going to be a huge, politically eventful days in landscape of Pakistan. Imran Khan has not only focused on his political rally and campaigning, but is also going to strengthen his tirade against the government, the issues that is ailing Pakistan's economy, security issues, the recent terrorist attacks, and how inefficient in his way Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has been. So this 1 week of relief will also let the momentum gather for the supporters of PTI, where they can actually launch their very strong opposition for the current ruling party. And we'll have to see from here onwards what are the allegations that Imran Khan are going to level against the Shehbaz Sharif and his government. And also, will this 1 week of relief be the last tranche of relief that Imran Khan will get, because he's been getting this legal sort of relief for a very long time, because initially he had given this alibi that he was still recovering from the assassination attempt that had happened a couple of months ago on him. So he did avoid those in-person appearances in courts. But now with this recovery made and the bail also being extended for 1 week, will the next hearing ask Imran Khan to be present in person, or will he be arrested also for in Toshkhana case or the other cases also that has been pending against him?
Right. Thank you, Abhishek, for getting us that piece of breaking news. So Imran Khan throwing down that challenge to his political rivals after that relief from the Islamabad High Court, promising for a record turnout in both Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa ahead of the national elections in Pakistan. But let's shift focus now